I'm Dr. Darshan Shah, and I'm the CEO and founder of Next Health and the creator of the Extend podcast.
He's a world-renowned surgeon, entrepreneur, and founder of Next Health.
I'm a health and wellness specialist, a board-certified surgeon, a published author, entrepreneur, and founder of Next Health, the world's first and largest health optimization and longevity clinic.
You've helped me so much with my health and well-being. It's evolved into a beautiful friendship as well.
Slow down your speed of aging.
Concept of don't die. Do you feel eventually that we're going to get to the point in scientific discovery that we are able to extend our lifespans potentially indefinitely? Is that kind of what you're saying?
I've been a patient and a client of Next Health.
Becoming the CEO of your own health, focusing on health rather than sickness. Medicine is incredible. It can save lives.
You actually became a medical doctor at the age of 21, becoming one of the youngest MDs in the country at the time.
Dr. Darshan Shah.
Longevity in life and everything.
That's crazy.
You ended up just working so hard for 20 years.
It's been life-changing. I'm just so grateful that people like you exist. I call you all my favorite people who have changed my life.
What drove you so passionately to become a physician?
As a physician, I'm constantly asked, what's the one thing I can do to achieve long-lasting good health?
Please welcome to the stage, Dr. Shah.
Hello, everybody. You guys ready to do a deep dive into gut health and metabolic health? What do you think? All right, let's do it. Let's do it. So my talk today is going to be focusing on repairing and optimizing your gut health. But this ties in so many different aspects of our biology. Before I do that, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. So I've been a physician now for 30 years. First 20 years I spent doing traditional Western medicine. In fact, I was a surgeon. I would go into people's guts literally every single day and operate on it. And I did this every single day, sometimes 12 hours a day. Sometimes I would do this 6-7 days a week. And, you know, life gets stressful. And what happens when you're working a lot? You get sick. And I found myself very sick about 12 years ago. Not only did I have metabolic disease that manifested itself as heart disease, I also had an autoimmune condition develop. And I was 50 pounds overweight, and I just didn't feel great at all. I could barely move, I could barely do my job. And I tried to get healthy. And what I did, I think a lot of us do, right? We try to find the best doctors we can. And I saw a doctor in Beverly Hills. I saw another doctor in Orange County. And guess what they did? They just gave me more and more medications, right? So I ended up on 12 different prescription medications. And I thought to myself, this cannot be the way I'm going to get healthy. I'm just going to be on more medications and I still feel terrible. So I went out there and I decided to get healthy on my own. And what did I do? I went out there to learn. And I learned that all of the diseases that I was having, heart disease, autoimmune disease, diabetes, all came from some root causes. And that were chronic inflammation, my hormones were dysregulated, and I had what was called leaky gut syndrome. And once I figured that out, within 8 months, I completely turned my health around. I got off all my prescription medication, almost all of them. I'm still on one. And I felt incredible again. And I decided, okay, I don't want to be a surgeon anymore. I'm going to go out there and really practice this new kind of medicine called functional medicine. And I started a clinic, which now we have over 30 clinics all over the world, helping people with their functional medicine journey. And I'm so excited to talk to you about functional medicine, what it is, and how you can bring it into your life. So this is a poster that we have up on every single one of our walls at our clinics called the Wellness Wheel. And this is a framework for how people go through their medicine journey. And there's 12 different aspects of the Wellness Wheel and divided up into 4 categories: lifestyle medicine, functional medicine, preventative medicine, and longevity medicine, okay? And these 4 types of medicine are completely different than Western medicine. In Western medicine, what do? You have symptoms, we have a pill for it, right? You have a pharmaceutical for it, or maybe we have a surgery for it. And, you know, thank God we have that system, right? Because if you have a heart attack, or if you get hit by a bus, for example, you need to go to the hospital, right? But that system was never built to reverse chronic disease, and it was never built to keep you healthy. Because health really comes from focusing on the basics. The basics are what this guy talked about, Dr. Jeffrey Bland. He is the godfather of functional medicine and now a good friend of mine. He wrote this book called Disease Delusion back in the 80s. And doctors laughed him off stage all the time. But really then, as more and more people were just getting sicker and sicker and our chronic disease epidemic just got worse and worse, doctors decided to take a different look, and I was one of them. And what Dr. Bland talked about was all disease comes from 8 root causes. These are inflammation, hormone deficiencies and imbalances, gut dysbiosis, chronic stress, insulin resistance, which is poor metabolic health, exposure to toxins, mitochondrial dysfunction, this is a picture of a mitochondria there, and oxidative stress. Now, mitochondrial dysfunction and oxidative stress all happen in that little organelle there in your cell called your mitochondria. This is what the previous speaker was talking about when he said ATP was being made. It happens in the mitochondria. And when this little organelle in your cell can't work well, you get many, many different types of problems, one of them being metabolic disease, okay? So when you're trying to reverse chronic disease, when you're trying to get off prescription medications, what happens is you start feeling better because you're addressing all of these 8 root causes. And what I love about functional medicine is not just about reversing disease or avoiding disease. You actually start feeling incredible. You start having more vitality. You have more energy. You have the ability to put muscle on and lose weight. Your brain is clear. You sleep well. You wake up feeling like you can attack the day and you're not tired all day long. And those are all the positive side effects of functional medicine. And the other thing that you realize when you start practicing functional medicine is that a lot of health really comes down to what's going on in your gut and your mitochondria, okay? Because your gut is connected to every other system in the body, your brain, your immune system, your cardiovascular and your metabolic systems. Let's dive into that a little bit more. Let's talk about the gut-brain connection. You probably have heard that 90% of the body's serotonin, which is a feel-good hormone, is produced in our gut, not even in our brain. And this serotonin communicates with our brain through a nerve that goes from your brain to every inch of your gut called the vagus nerve. This is an incredible nerve that, when I was a surgeon, we used to cut this nerve when people had ulcers. And now I can't believe we used to do that because the vagus nerve is how your gut communicates with your brain and your brain communicates with your gut. And when your gut is off, you get inflamed, right, throughout your entire body. This is what gives you that wired and simultaneously tired feeling that a lot of people get. And we know this happens because of communication from the gut through the vagus nerve to the brain saying something's not right here. And then we also know about the new science of what's called fecal transplants. When you transplant the feces of a mouse to another mouse that is one of them is thin and one of them is obese, the obese one gets thin. And so there's some communication happening through the gut microbiome there as well. Now, the gut is also connected to your immune system. 70% of our immune system lives in the gut. And when your gut is healthy, your immune system is free to go out there to do what it does best. What does our immune system do? Well, it protects us from infections, but it also keeps every single organ in our body healthy and happy. It actually goes out there surveilling the entire body for cancers and gets rid of cancer before it can become a problem. But if your gut is unhealthy, your immune system is too busy in the gut trying to fight off toxins in your gut. And then this is something I'm really excited about. Our gut is now known, and this is just new science that's coming out in the last 5 to 10 years, that there's a connection between our hormone systems and our gut. So gut bacteria, some of the bacteria that are in your gut actually metabolize estrogen. They actually can turn estrogen on or off. And depending on if you have the right type of bacteria, you can actually help people go through the perimenopause and menopause journey in a much more healthy fashion and with less symptoms. Cortisol actually affects our gut. We know that because when you're stressed, your cortisol levels go up and then your gut becomes impaired. But also your gut has a lot to do with how much cortisol is being secreted. And finally, thyroid hormone conversion also occurs in the gut. So people with hyperthyroidism or hypothyroidism often have gut symptoms, but also people with poor gut health have thyroid symptoms as well. So all of this works in 2 directions. And when you look at the gut and you really zoom in, this is a picture of what the gut looks like, okay? There are 3 different layers to the gut. You have a mucus layer, you have the gut microbiome, and then you have your intestinal epithelial cells, okay? And so each one of these 3 layers is incredibly important. Let's talk about the microbiome. You've heard about this. This is the trillions of bacteria, virus, and fungi that live synergistically with you, trying to keep you healthy. And the way we're thinking about the gut microbiome now, and this is incredible to me that we're having this mindset shift, is that our microbiome is actually another organ inside of us. It is a metabolically active organ similar to our liver. Our liver is an incredibly important organ, as we all know. So one organ in our body that we can't replicate outside using medical technology. The gut is the same. And once you start thinking about your microbiome as being this important, this central to our health, you realize how important it is to support good gut health, okay? And now these three layers, when they become damaged, you get this diagnosis called leaky gut. And this is a diagnosis that in functional medicine is central to everything that we do, but Western medicine kind of poo-poos it and doesn't even acknowledge it, really. And let me tell you a little bit about what leaky gut is. So leaky gut is when these three layers, the mucus layer, the microbiome layer, and also the intestinal epithelial cells are all simultaneously damaged. And what happens is your gut cells, which are the epithelial cells in your gut, they separate from each other, and they get they allow toxins and they allow gut negative bacteria toxins to get through, and even proteins from the foods get through, okay? And so this layer of cells is just one layer thick, one cell layer thick. It's really tiny. And these three layers being damaged allows toxins to get through to your bloodstream. So then what happens when that happens? I know, I didn't want these slides to be boring, so I got on ChatGPT. I went a little bit nuts. I apologized. But how cute, right? So what happens is that your gut becomes leaky. And once your gut is leaky, you get bacteria going through that intestinal epithelial layer, and your immune systems, remember 70% of the immune system lives in the gut, it goes crazy. And it just, all it has time to do is fight those toxins, fight those negative bacteria that are coming through. And it doesn't have time to protect you from other diseases, okay? And the problem here is that we have to get our gut healthy again. And we can do this by protecting those three layers. So the mucus layer damage, this is caused by low levels of protein, alcohol, even stress. Remember I told you the cortisol connection to our gut can decrease the amount of that mucus layer. The microbiome gets damaged by taking antibiotics, right? We all know we take way too many antibiotics right now. Every time we get sick, you just get an antibiotic. Well, this is like a nuclear bomb to your gut bacteria. Your gut bacteria feeds on fiber, right? So probiotics and prebiotics are incredibly important. And finally, those epithelial cells, those gut cells, that tiny thin layer that if you spread it out, it's about the size of a football field, believe it or not, they get damaged by non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. And get this, microplastics actually lodge themselves in between our gut cells and go inside our gut cells and cause damage. And finally, toxins from glyphosate. The glyphosate is a pesticide sprayed on produce. And if you're buying produce and you're not washing it well and it's not organic, this is also damaging our gut wall. And even gluten and in very few people, dairy can also cause irritation of the gut wall, okay? So what are poor guy. So what are the consequences of this, right? So what happens is you're getting these lipopolysaccharides, LPS, these are fragments of bacteria. Undigested food particles are going through your gut, and your immune system is going crazy saying, I just got to get all this stuff out of me. And when your immune system goes crazy, that's called chronic inflammation, because your immune system is always active, right? And the cascading effect of this, we know chronic inflammation leads to chronic diseases, autoimmune disease, metabolic dysfunction, neurological symptoms, even Alzheimer's disease, okay? Cardiovascular disease risk. A lot of people think like, oh, heart disease is due to high levels of cholesterol. Well, I can tell you that that's only a very actually small part of the problem. The bigger problem with heart disease is chronic inflammation, okay? So inflammation we know is the root cause of most modern disease. All of the thousands of diseases that people can get diagnosed with, remember they can be due to those 8 root causes. Inflammation is one of the major causes of those. And the triggers that we all talk about for chronic inflammation, like ultra-processed food, poor sleep, etc., all of this is mediated through the gut. chronic inflammation is happening through the gut, and then that is what's leading to all of these diseases, okay? So how do we fix this? It's a three-step system. I heard you guys like three-step systems, so this is another one for you. Step 1, remove the insults. Step 2, support and nourish. And step 3, rebalance and maintain. So in medicine, we like to call anything bad that you're doing to your and so here are some of the insults that we can remove to get our gut healthy. Because if you're not going to remove the insults, anything you do to treat the gut is going to be much less effective or ineffective, right? So you've got to stop causing the damage first. What are some of the potential damaging things that people are doing? Well, stress. We know this cortisol-gut connection is massive. So minimizing and eliminating stress as much as possible. Reducing alcohol intake. Reducing your exposure to microplastics. The less you can drink out of plastic bottles, the less you can store your food at home in plastics, the better. Removing food irritants. Many food irritants are actually found in ultra-processed food. These are all the chemicals that are being added to ultra-processed foods. We talked about antibiotics, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. These are drugs like Advil. These are also nuclear bombs to your gut bacteria. Ultra-processed foods, we all know that these are not just nutrient deficient, but they are also laden with chemicals, and they're usually wrapped in plastic, which then gives you more microplastics. We talked about glyphosate, and also pathogenic microbes are also becoming more and more in the forefront in functional medicine, things like parasites and other bacteria that cause small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, okay? So step 1 is gonna be to stop damaging your gut. And a critical element of this that, I believe in the Pareto principle. There's 20% actions that give you 80% of the result. Here's one of those actions. Shift your dietary pattern. Take that food pyramid that we were taught in the 1980s, and finally, we flipped it around a few days ago. Did you guys see the news on this? Right? And this is a monumental moment in history because now we finally have some really good advice on how to not just be healthy from a physiological standpoint, but also to keep our gut bacteria healthy, okay? And so you want a plant-forward diet with more healthy fats, more protein, a lot more protein than we were previously told to be taking, and obviously minimizing or eliminating. I mean, if you could do one major thing in your life in 2026 is to swear off ultra-processed food as much as possible, this is going to be a game changer, okay? Let's talk about step 2, supporting and nourishing. And this is where the Plexus products are incredibly helpful because you have to give your gut the things it needs to heal. And when you give it the things it needs to heal, you're simultaneously giving it what it needs to stay healthy as well. Your gut needs adequate protein intake. You got to get in that 1 gram per kilogram of 1 gram per pound of body weight of protein on a daily basis, and you want to spread that out throughout the day, okay? So breakfast, lunch, dinner, spread out your protein intake. Micronutrients, vitamin D. I'm so happy to hear vitamin D is going to be in your new product. Zinc, magnesium, all of these micronutrients are incredibly supportive to your gut health. Amino acids like leucine, glutamine are important. Prebiotics like the ones that we talked about earlier, but also some of these oligosaccharides are incredibly important. Creatine, great for your gut health, believe it or not, okay? And then finally, probiotics as well, with proven strains of the right bacteria. Step 3, this is important. This is where a lot of people kind of miss the boat on keeping their gut healthy, because it's not just about the supplements you take, it's not just about removing the insults, it's about living a healthy lifestyle to promote gut health. You have to have better sleep hygiene. Sleep is incredibly important to your gut because that's when your gut gets a break. Regular movement. Movement, it keeps your gut moving. When you're walking and getting your 8,000 steps a day, guess what? Your gut is actually moving as well. Your stress management, we talked about this over and over again. So what are some great ways to get your stress under good control? I'll give you one hack here. Stress, psychological stress, only turns into physical problems after cortisol gets released, okay? And it takes about 30 to 45 minutes for psychological stress to turn into stress response in your cortisol axis from your glands. So what does that mean? Every 30, 45 minutes, just take a break from whatever's stressful. If you're having a stressful phone call, just hang up in 30, 45 minutes. Anyone here use Zoom? You guys use Zoom? Okay. If you don't pay for it, they cut you off after 40 minutes. So sorry, I got to go. I'm not paying for my Zoom account. All right. So this is a really good hack, actually, and it really can be helpful in preventing that cortisol buildup over time. Hydration, stay hydrated, time-restricted eating. So, fasting is not for everybody, but I can tell you that I can see fasting helping a lot of people that have problems maintaining caloric intake, but also problems with constantly feeding their gut, okay? And so if you can look into maybe a 16, 8-hour fast or even like a 3-day fast once every 3 or 4 months, this can be incredibly helpful. And lastly, metabolic health. So you might have heard a little bit about metabolic health. I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about it today because this should be another big focus in your life is how do you get your metabolic health in order? How do you assess your metabolic health, and what can you do to make it better, all right? And in fact, this is the next slide. This guy is getting his metabolic health in order, okay? And there's a device out there now called the continuous glucose monitor. The continuous glucose monitor is a little patch you put on your arm. Has anyone tried the continuous glucose monitor in this room yet? Yep, okay, great. Good stuff? Yeah, you learn a lot. Finally, for the first time in history, we can get consistent feedback and data from our own body telling us what's going on the inside. And we can start making changes way before we get sick with a chronic disease. So when your blood sugar level stays high all day long for long periods of time, this leads to eventually diabetes. But it takes about a decade or 2 decades with high blood sugar to turn into a diagnosis of diabetes, okay? What's happening in the meanwhile is your pancreas is going crazy secreting insulin, trying to prevent you from getting diabetes. But eventually, your cells give up, your pancreas can't do it anymore, and you get this diagnosis of diabetes. Now, diabetes is a root cause of many diseases. It leads to Alzheimer's disease. In fact, Alzheimer's has caused type 3 diabetes of the brain. It leads to cardiovascular diseases and heart attacks. It can lead to autoimmune disease. It can even lead to cancer. And so preventing diabetes is incredibly important. And to prevent diabetes, you have to have good metabolic health, which means keeping your blood sugar level under control. How do you do that? Well, the obvious thing is, eat less sugar, but that's only one way of doing it. The other things that you can do is, for example, sequence your food correctly. Instead of eating carbohydrates at your beginning of the meal, eat them at the end of the meal. Start your food with high fiber vegetables. Start your food, your meals with protein, and that's going to decrease the absorption of glucose into your bloodstream, okay? The other thing you'll learn with the continuous glucose monitor is that every time you move after a meal, even if it's for 5 minutes, your blood glucose level won't spike, okay? So this is incredibly important after every meal. Just try to get moving, even a 5-10 minute walk. Maybe you do some air squats in the room. Kind of looks weird at a restaurant when you're doing that, but that can work. For 20% of people, believe it or not, a little bit of vinegar and water prior to a meal will totally blunt a glucose curve. The other thing you'll learn about your glucose curve is that when you eat something, it might cause a glucose spike in you, and then your husband or wife, it doesn't. Like, for example, when I eat a banana in the morning, my glucose level will spike all the way up and stay that way for 3 hours, and my wife can eat a banana, it's not a problem. And so these are the kind of things you learn about your body when you wear a continuous glucose monitor. And this pairs really, really well with just getting healthy, because what happens is you learn about your body and you get this consistent and constant feedback that you can then use to change your habits. And it's all about habit change for the long term, right? And so these are my tips. I wanted to give you some quick tips that you can use today. I think you guys are so empowered with such incredible technology through Plexus to really making a change in people's lives. And it's so important for all of you to learn about how these products work, but also what are the other things that you can do? What's available now in the realm of medicine and functional medicine that can really move the needle? I have a podcast called Extend, so please listen. I talk about this kind of stuff all the time. I have a website, drshah.com, and I'm happy to educate you more anytime in the future through these mediums. Thank you so much for having me.